highest, so damn you haters. Presently I do things that you can't do later. Intellectuals find sense in my fine print. They say your line's dense, hence it's nonsense. While you practice your flow's canon, I compose cannons across the Atlantic, somewhere in Paris. Switching y'all moods while giving y'all fugues. I'm hitting y'all dudes like this. Scene 3. Do y'all want to be a part of this musical revolution? Well, you must say yes. If you really love this execution, this is, oh, here's an ED epitome, get it me, those rebelling against the industry. And another, man, another, yet another, yes another, just another RN joint.
Just in my reading, I've encountered a lot of MCs who will integrate or approach MCing as a science.
Right.
And will have that kind of level of precision and
right.
principles, and so before you get into kind of your particular thing, what about MCing? Even going back to Rakim. Back in the lab.
And I back to the lab without a mic to grab, so then I add all the rhymes I had.
And you even refer this to the lab, and before you straighten everything up, you talk about how everything was all over the place like a scientist.
Papers here.
Larry, you call yourself a mad scientist. So, what is it about science? Again, something that people wouldn't ordinarily associate with anything having to do with hip hop. But here's a strong metaphor of science. What do you attribute that to? Generally,
I see it having to do with the whole science of trying to explain everything in intricate detail. A scientist will look at a table and not just see a table. He's like, a table? Well, these things here, and then he'll try to break it down, each little line on the table.
All right.
Each thing that we see into intricate detail. If this is made of sawdust, he's going to look at each particle and say, what is that made of? And what are those particles made of? And what is... And I do
breaking things down further and further.
Seeing, being that I teach a class, it helps me a lot to study rap as an art form. It helps me to study...
So in a sense, it's like your scientific method.
Yes, it helps me in my teaching. So what I do is I sit down and I look at my own raps and I observe. That's what scientists do. They just sit back and observe. You can't be a scientist who doesn't listen. There's an artist that I particularly respect, Cannabis, who reads a lot of science.
With knowledge of genetic information, you need to fear science, not Satan.
It's just like scientists though. Like, this project I'm working on called The Hypothesis. It's just a bunch of my theories that have to do with rap music. Has to do with my analysis and my studies on the whole process of rap and writing and what it takes. But it's like every other hypothesis from a standpoint of, it can be broken down the line by some other experiments. You know what I mean? It can be proven wrong. The only thing is, I take delight in knowing that I'm starting something. Isaac Newton, I find that Isaac Newton was, I find that he had a lot of concepts, but Einstein studied his concepts and ended up proving some of his concepts wrong, or ended up overthrowing his concepts with his concept of relativity. And the funny thing is, I say all this to say that Einstein learned from Newton. He definitely learned from him. And that's in another book that I'm reading called Everything Einstein. I'll say that too. Everything Einstein. And I just started, I'm not too far in the book, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
I find so much that I have in common with Einstein. I'm not saying I'm the greatest genius as he was. But I find that I have a lot in common with him. I believe in my field, there can be a scientist, somebody who studies it in intricate detail. And one of the biggest things that they said made Einstein the genius, that everybody talks about and write books about and do movies about and all this other stuff. Why did they choose him? Because he was able to make his ideas accessible to the general public. That has to do with everybody who has any art form. For example, like if I'm able to make my ideas accessible to the public, you know, in the future people might write about me because, you know, I was the one that they could recognize. So when they talk about a genius in rap, they might have a guy who looks like me. You know, now every scientist has to look like Einstein. You know, he has to have his hair out, white hair. You know, everybody who's a genius has to have that look, they said. You know, but he didn't even have his hair like that until, you know, later on in his life.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's the funny.
That's the icon.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
I know what that equals, MC squared. I am Rhymestein of the Rhyme Nation. Here's the era called the Renaissance. I'm the bridegroom who writes at high noon, trying to write tunes inside a Christ tomb. With a mind quicker than the loneliest monk, meditative mind state of the loneliest monk, equipped with the pen, rhyme way ahead of my train. I spit a verse then go back in time to hear it again, exceeding the maximum syllable requirement. I invent the quantum theory for scientists, rule alterer, flow like advanced algebra. To kids and old heads alike, the O's always tough. You say I ain't the best then, I suggest men put your auditory perception in question. It's the resurrection, Lord of the lesson. In less than a quarter of a second, I can even slaughter a veteran. And I rhyme like greed and bread. Ohene will forever rhyme like dead and fed. What's in my head is said to be the end of you amateurs. Unusual neural capacity of Benjamin Banneker. I manage to damage your and smash ya. I'm the MC with asthma that flows like plasma. Hooks, verses, external rhymes, internal rhymes, masculine rhymes, feminine rhymes, and rich rhymes by versification. We'll understand this in this time.
I'm talking about the hip hop.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So, but anyway, with that, in the verse, you notice that I say around here, what if I say, watch me anagrammatize just as quick as you think. What if I told you that Krishna is a shrimp? Now, people don't know that. If you heard that, it's irrelevant. But I highlighted these. I made these bold. Krishna and a shrimp are anagrams. You know, if you rearrange the letters,
Oh, okay. Oh,
actually
man.
get
The same letters make the different.
right.
Oh, man.
And I say that the eyes they see, and if you be silent, and listen.
Another anagram.
And so later on, all these are anagrams. Astronomers, no more stars. But later on in the verse, I have a line where I say, I'm heavily armed with the phonetics and letters is embedded in my genetics, poetic of headaches to people who didn't get it. That's cool. Don't feel like a fool. You'd have to have read it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I'm trying to let people know that, you know, you might not have, my lyrics might give you a headache sometimes, but you probably have to read some of this stuff to get it. I suggest men put your auditory perception in question. You know, in science, I got that from a physiology book. It talks about hearing, and it's called the auditory perception and how you hear. So I say, if you say I'm not the best, somebody needs to question your auditory perception. Somebody needs to question what you hear. Like, what do you hear? What are you hearing?